So, I'm writing this video on Christmas Day, when I really should be doing family stuff or whatever, but instead I was inspired to write a video. I just want to start by pointing out that I'm up early, and there are presents under the tree where there weren't last night when I went to bed. Furthermore, many of the tags say "From Santa." The Santa deniers simply have no explanation for this, and will continue to embarrass themselves every December 25th, when their ridiculous conspiracy theory suffers a terminal collision with reality. But that's another video for another day. The gifts under my tree got me thinking of my favorite Christmas gifts from my youth. Perhaps the best Christmas gift I ever received was when Santa delivered an N64 to my brother and I when he was 11 and I was 9. Not only was this the new hot system at the time, it came with one of the greatest games ever, Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. The game was released November of that year, just in time for the Christmas season, and there are tons of videos of delighted children opening exactly that present on Christmas Day. It was a cultural phenomenon. The Legend of Zelda is probably my favorite video game franchise of all time. I've played almost all of the canon games, but at this point in my life, I had only played A Link to the Past. That game was revolutionary for its time, but Ocarina of Time was that on steroids. Before we even got outside of the Kokiri Forest, I was in awe of how expansive it was. There was nothing like it at the time. It was unreal how big the world was. Little did I know that an even better Zelda game, Majora's Mask, would be released less than 2 years later. Last year, the most expansive Zelda game ever created was released for the Switch, Tears of the Kingdom. I loved it and played it for hours on end, and certainly consider it to be a great game. That said, I'm squarely in the camp that both Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, while being great games in their own right, are deviations from the traditional Legend of Zelda format, and that the franchise would benefit greatly from returning to its roots. Feel free to post disparaging comments below. Like I said earlier, when I first played Ocarina of Time, the game seemed so massive. There was no end to the exploration. The world even changed from day to night, making everything seem more layered and complex. When I went back and played the game last year, it was still a lot of fun, though the Switch adapted controls kind of sucked, but it felt so much smaller than I originally remembered. This is because I actually knew what to do, hence I didn't need to go exploring, like I had in my youth. And since I've played games like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, along with other open-world games, Ocarina of Time just seems so tiny by comparison. The most remarkable thing about Tears of the Kingdom, though, is not just how much more expansive it is than Ocarina of Time, but how much cheaper it is. Reason Magazine released a short video on Twitter doing a price comparison between the two games when they came out. The link to that video is in the description box below if you'd like to watch it for yourself, but I'll be summarizing the main points here. Back when Ocarina of Time was first released, it was listed at $70 retail in the Sears holiday catalog. When Tears of the Kingdom came out last year, its initial retail price was $70. Now, as most people know, those prices are not the same thanks to inflation. If you adjust the 1998 price to today's dollars, Ocarina of Time would have cost $125 today. Furthermore, there are massive qualitative differences between the games. Quality isn't easy to measure, and some of it is subjective. Some people think that Ocarina of Time is better than Tears of the Kingdom, and there's simply no way to disprove that. But a game that looks like and is as big as Tears of the Kingdom wasn't even possible in 1998. In a previous video, I discussed the idea of time prices. Just to recap, time prices are the amount of time your average person has to work to afford a given good or service. It's my favorite way to measure changes in costs over time, because it's truly standard. There are 24 hours in a day now, just as there were 10,000 years ago. Using time prices, your average person had to work just 3 hours to be able to afford Tears of the Kingdom. Back in 1998, someone had to work for 5 hours to be able to afford Ocarina of Time. And again, while it's truly subjective which game is more fun or better overall, technically speaking, Tears of the Kingdom is the far more advanced game. You wouldn't know this if you read certain gaming journalists, or certain political pundits who have a superficial view of economics and prosperity. As Stacey Henley writes at The Gamer, here's the crux of the issue. When I was a kid, my favorite games were Crash Bandicoot, Spyro, and Tomb Raider. I got a new game from all of them every year. From 1996 to 2003, Tomb Raider had one game every year, 2 in the year 2000. It then took a 3-year break and came back with my favorite game in the series, and went on another run of 3 games in 3 years. Crash Bandicoot went back-to-back, 96 through 98. Spyro had a decade-long unbroken streak from 1998 to 2008, although admittedly they weren't all winners. I know some of these games, even the great ones, don't hold up today. When they brought back Crash and Spyro for remasters, they had to pack the trilogy together, so they added up to a reasonable playtime for modern audiences. And, as I mentioned above, the audience is very different. Length used to come from challenging difficulty. Now it comes from easy filler. But the fact remains that gaming used to be able to produce major hits and rewarding experiences for much cheaper, and still leave its audience satisfied. Now we're made to wait 5 years or more between series, and then drop $70 for them. Studios have to charge that much, because it costs them $700 million to make and market. Things can't keep going this way, it's just too expensive. So let's check some of the prices of the games she mentioned. I will be using the Consumer Price Index calculator for all the numbers here, and I will be using the earliest date I could find to get the closest to the release time. Crash Bandicoot was $64.99 in 1996, which would be just over $125 today. Tomb Raider was $59.99 in 1997, which would cost you just under $115 today. Spyro the Dragon was $49.99 in 1999, making it the cheapest game at $91 today. Now, I'll grant you that not everything in the gaming industry has improved. For example, I have not bought a Madden game since I was in high school, and by all accounts, the new games are terrible. You can thank the NFL and the NFLPA for granting exclusive rights to EA for that one. Furthermore, a lot of games that come out now, even premier titles, arguably especially premier titles, are often buggy and need to be fixed before they can be played properly. I'm more of a retro gamer myself, and I appreciate the simplicity of plugging in a cartridge and being able to play it from the word go. Plus, a lot of games have downloadable content and microtransactions that add to the cost of playing. This is an element of modern gaming that I don't really appreciate. That said, I would argue that the improvements have far outweighed the downsides, and not just in terms of prices and graphics. There's simply way more variety now. You have so many more options, as independent studios are able to crank out modern games with a retro feel that are incredibly inexpensive. Last year, I bought a game called Blazing Chrome for my Switch. It's a lot like the old Contra games, except this one only cost me $17, whereas the original Contra cost twice that in 1988, which would be almost $90 today. What's true for games is true for consoles as well. A gaming channel that I enjoy watching is called Triple Jump, and one of my favorite videos by them, I like it because of how informative it is one where they rank every video game console ever made. The link to this video is in the description box below in case you want to watch it for yourself. Ranking every video game console ever made is a monumental task, as there have been thousands of video game consoles over the years. The video is almost 2 hours long, even with them cheating. Their first entry, as in the worst on the list, is the entire first generation of consoles. The era starts in 1972 and goes to 1984 and includes over 680 consoles. That's approximately one console released every week, most of which are completely unmemorable, and are basically all just clones of Atari's Pong. The second worst console of all time, according to Triple Jump, is the APF Imagination Machine. Released in 1979, the console had 15 games. 15 games and not a single Pong clone, amazingly. According to Wikipedia, the system boasted a 14KB ROM, 9KB RAM, 8-bit graphics, and 8 colors. Pretty unremarkable, but typical for 1979. The most remarkable thing about the system was the price. It retailed at $700, which is $2,821 in 2022, making it the most expensive game console Triple Jump ranked, and the most expensive game console ever made that's not some special edition or limited release. Compare this to the PS5, which had a launch price of $499.99, with specs that would blow away even the most advanced computers from 1979. So why is it that video games and video game consoles have gotten so much cheaper? Well, first of all, it's part of a general trend of most goods and services in the United States. According to the American Enterprise Institute, a lot of things have gotten cheaper, especially electronics. And again, these are parts of the economy that have arguably seen the biggest improvements in quality since then. Among the things that haven't gotten cheaper, food and housing have been outpaced by increases in hourly wages, which again means their time price has gone down. The only exceptions are hospital services, college tuition and fees, college textbooks, medical care services, and childcare and nursery services. I'll let you piece together what's going on there. I can't help but feel that a major factor here is that there's not some big push in the US for economic nationalism when it comes to video games. At least not that I've seen. I don't see hordes of idiots screeching about how you should buy an Xbox because you'll be buying American and that's the right thing to do. People don't seem to have any problem buying Japanese gaming consoles or games developed in other countries. This is the exact opposite attitude many Americans had when the Japanese started selling cars in America back in the 1970s. If anything, there's a lot of envy when consoles are released in different markets first, and there's a lot of yearning for ports that are exclusive to other countries. These are some of the most pirated games out there, oftentimes with hilariously bad translations. Video games are very much an example of globalization bearing fruit. People can buy, sell, play, and collaborate across borders with fewer restrictions than there are in most other industries. And for all the flaws that surely do exist in the gaming industry now, things have largely improved. Think about what could happen if we treated the rest of the economy like this.